So
Live streaming is on.
kind of shaking them up right here. I mean, I've been tempted to go over there and get that barrier out of the creek myself. I mean, it was 15 feet down, and that creek really floods when they have a lot of rain. They were expecting it last night, but evidently there wasn't enough rain to make it flood. Floods almost all the way up to their house. It's kind of strange, but anyway. So there's been at least one fatality here in North Carolina.
Oh, the person died, Larry?
As far as I know.
Wow.
Terrible.
Brent, I think Bob has had to leave early the last few times. If you want to start with him, maybe.
Actually, I have two groups that meet at the same time, the first Saturday, and so I've been actually the other one starts at 1, but I stop in here for a while. Today they're meeting next week, so I was going to stay longer, but I don't really have any news, any Linux changes. So but I thought I'd learn what's going on and what Dan's been up to and everybody else as well. Glad to see everybody again. Actually, everybody on the picture right now, I recognize from a long time ago. So I don't see any new faces.
Yeah, we're the diehards, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Before I had my mic muted, which sometimes happens when I'm fiddling around with things. Okay, thanks, Bob. Certainly feel free to chime back in. Gene, what you got going on?
Well, not a whole lot either. It's been kind of a slow time for me. I've been oh, there we go. I changed my screen where I was just looking at myself, which is probably the worst thing you can do, right? I've been thrilled with the Linux stuff. I've heard about all these. I'd like somebody to explain what a zero time intrusion is. They say that Microsoft is having trouble now with that. Brent, do you know what those are?
When something says 0 day, it means
or 0 day.
That means that there is active exploitation going on for something that there's not a patch for. So the vendor has not announced the vulnerability, but folks are out there exploiting the vulnerability, meaning that there's no time there isn't any opportunity to fix it. That's why it's 0 day. It's like, it's out there. You need to be worried about it. People are working on it. Whereas normally, hopefully a vendor will discover something or a security research will discover something, inform the vendor, and then folks generally have time to patch before folks know what to do to exploit it. Yeah, that came in actually yesterday and it's for Microsoft Exchange, which we use. And it looks like this Vietnamese security firm really did all the work to discover what was going on and to discover how to mitigate it. And we implemented that mitigation. Basically, I woke up, saw it in my email. Our security services vendor reported it to us as, hey, you should take care of this. I'm like, oh, yep, I should. So what it is it's, I haven't really even gotten into all the nuts and bolts of how it does what it does, but it uses a specially crafted web request to an Exchange server that does bad things, that exploits essentially two different vulnerabilities. And what you can do to mitigate it is within the web server itself, say block requests that have these particular things in it, which is what we've done. So we're not yet patched because Microsoft hasn't released the patch, but we have mitigated by blocking the web requests in question. Also, I went through my logs for my Exchange server to verify that those requests have not come in the past. So our notion is we have not been exploited by it and we should be relatively safe from it. assuming that the mitigation is adequate.
Is there any indication that that any particular OS is more vulnerable than any other, or I mean, it just seems to me that a lot of them are Microsoft, but that's probably what 90%, 95% of the computers out there are using, right?
The vulnerability is for Microsoft Exchange Server. So it has to be, and it is various versions. I think it's 2013, 2016, 2019. So pretty much anybody running Exchange Server in their corporate environment is vulnerable until they're patched or mitigated. It's not going to affect end users necessarily. It's definitely sort of a corporate environment thing.
Well, the other thing is who was it? One of the companies that I use announced that they had an intrusion, but this was like a year ago, and they're just now telling me. Is there any indication that these are happening more often, or that there's any kind of pattern to it? I just read about a 15-year-old kid over in England who hacked Grand Theft Auto or one of those things. So, I mean, is it that easy?
Well, yes and no. I mean, a lot of intrusions in networks happen because of very commonplace things like people giving up their username and passwords. The vast majority of exploitations these days are through phishing or through some sort of social engineering. It's a lot easier to have people tell you their information than to discover their information. So I send you an email saying, please click on this link and do this thing. And the vast majority of those times you'll be led to a site that is designed to look like something like a cloud Microsoft site, just because so many people do things in the Microsoft cloud. And then enter your credentials. So you enter your credentials, and then it takes those credentials and tries to exploit your account to do various bad things. One of which would be send more emails to get more people to get more accounts. And the best protection against those things is, of course, education, telling people not to click on those things, and multi-factor authentication, because then you get those credentials from people, but then you can't make use of them because they also have a multi-factor authentication product. So, which can also be, you could also trick people into approving the multi-factor prompt or provide the code, but it's something else they have to do, and that obviously is more of a real-time component, whereas most phishing is more asynchronous.
Well, I guess the other thing is just not use Microsoft.
Well, again, phishing is, it doesn't matter what you're providing credentials, as long as it's a username and password.
Right. Okay.
Everything is vulnerable to that. It's it's the chair keyboard interface is always the most vulnerable component. You're muted.
Oh, for me, I guess that's pretty much it. I haven't really been doing a whole lot, just following along with my continued use of Xubuntu and keeping it updated and all that. So I guess that's probably, well, that, and I try to keep a fairly low profile and keep my financial stuff kind of in a silo, so that it's not in something that I use for everyday browsing or searching or anything like that. So I don't know. I guess we all need to be more cognizant of security, but it's hard to know. It's easy to overreact and hard to know when and how to react to any sort of threats that you hear of. So anyway, that's me.
All right, thanks, Gene. Larry, what you got going on?
Not that too much. I did download Mint 21, and that's what I'm running actually for this meeting right now. It seems to be running okay on this old Microsoft Vista aged Dell laptop, Inspiron. So that was pretty easy and productive, I guess.
Are you actually running Vista, Larry?
No, I mean there's Vista on the hard drive, but
You're running Linux.
I've got Mint, various versions of Mint and other versions of Linux on here too. Dual multi-boot, whatever you call it. So I prefer not to use any kind of Windows, to tell you the truth. The other thing that I've, not really Linux related, but just hardware issue that I've had is Brent gave me that Shuttle XPC a number of years ago. And it had some hardware problems with it, like the power supply quit on it. I looked inside it and found a bloated capacitor and removed it. And then the power supply seemed to work without that capacitor. I never replaced it. And sound dropped, the mother sound on the board seemed to have dropped out, and I put a sound card in it. And that seemed to fix that. I had sound again. But I've had trouble with it recently, just crashing on me. And this last time it crashed, I haven't really been using it a whole lot because I've got 3 Lenovo computers that I think are newer than that were discarded, and these 2 Dell laptops that were discarded. So I think they're newer than that too. So I've been using it for storage and backup. You can see a little distraction here with the kids. Anyway, I think the thing may have died now, and so I was looking on the board. I was booted it up and copied some files off of it, and then it just quit, hung up, and can't seem to get it to start up again. It won't power on self-test. And I looked at all the capacitors on the motherboard. Since there was one bad in the power supply, I thought maybe capacitors on the motherboard were also bad. But there are different kinds of capacitors that seem to be small and have metal on them, and they don't seem to exhibit the same sort of structural damage that I've seen on blown capacitors before. So I haven't been able to make any success with that. And I pulled the RAM out of it. It doesn't even give me an error message, a beep code with no RAM in it. So problem with it is with these others, I have multiple versions of identical computers, so I can swap parts around, and I don't really have anything else with the Shuttle PC to swap stuff with to do much testing, and I don't really want to spend a lot of money on it since these others were discarded. It didn't cost me anything. So like with this Dell laptop, I think I told you the Wi-Fi dropped out on it. So I pulled an Intel 5100 mini PCI Express card out of the other one and put it in here, and it works again. So I happen to have another computer almost identical. Just got to swap parts around between them. If I could find some, I'm still sort of looking at this Shuttle, trying to figure out what I could do if the motherboard died or the processor died or something. I don't really have anything to swap around. So that's about what I've been stuck on or thinking about for a little while, trying to figure this out, or this week anyway. So that's about it for me for right now. Unless you want to hear about hurricanes. But anybody older person who's lived in the Southeast for a long time, I'm sure has a lot of hurricane stories.
Yeah, maybe we can get back up on hurricanes when we're all done. I'll talk your ear off about hurricanes for sure. Sorry, I'm a little flustered because I had to reboot there. Let's see, Alan.
Well, I've been fixing things. Had a number of hardware issues that I had to take care of. We had one of our Wi-Fi radios, the LAN port on it failed. So I had to replace that radio. And then we had a camera that failed. So my associate had to climb the tower, and we saw that it wasn't the camera itself that failed. It was the Ethernet connector. There's eight wires in an Ethernet connector, and two of them definitely showed burn marks. So we replaced that cable, and that brought the camera back online. And other than that, I've been working with Dan on one of his projects, and I'll wait until he comes back online here and he can talk about that. So that's basically what I've been up to. There he is.
Well,
You're muted.
that sounds like a good segue to Dan.
Okay. Yeah, I turned my video off and my microphone off so it would save bandwidth for us. Yeah, I've been working, trying to get refreshed on Drupal, which is a content management framework. Years ago, when it was Drupal 6, is when I started learning it. And that's been so long ago, I can't remember when it was exactly. And I had built a couple of Drupal sites, but things have changed a lot. We're up to Drupal 10 beta now, and I'm running 9.4.7, I believe it is, or 6, that Alan has helped me with on the Raspberry Pi. So that's where I'm self-hosting our current website, and I'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, so a lot of things have changed between Drupal 6 and 9. That's, I don't have time to explain it all. The totally different way to install Drupal, a totally different way to manage it, and a totally different way to upgrade it. So I had to relearn it. And someone looking on the web for a good tutorial for that purpose, and I found one. It was 9 hours long, and I sat over a period of about 7 days watching nothing but that video, which was 9 continuous hours of video. A lady who was an instructor in Drupal and had several other degrees and she owned her own website design business, conducted that tutorial. It was free, very well done. It's the best tutorial, I guess, for that kind of product I've seen in a long time. And I learned a lot, but Alan has been an invaluable resource for me. I mean, this guy went well beyond the expected. I reached out to him with, I guess it was on the platform, but then he got privately with me, which is fine. But I mean, I couldn't ask for someone to be a better person to send me emails and links and things like that. And not only that, he sent me a micro SD card with instructions on his setup, which I've now copied to my RAID 1 NAS so that I have a backup in case something happens. But I just want to say shout out to Alan. If you guys need some support for Drupal anyway, Alan's your guy. Very, very well done, Alan. I appreciate all you've done for me. But what I did was, now that I've kind of gotten back up to speed on Drupal, I took a look at our WNCLUG.com website. I was going there to find it, and what I found was a park site that somebody had grabbed. Not sure who it is or what the company is, but of course that's a protected park site, and so you don't know, you can't tell by looking at it. And they were asking $288.88 to buy the domain. And I just said to myself, there's no way. So what I did was I looked for WNCLUG.org, thinking, okay, we're an organization and we'll go with that. And only to find that has been purchased and is in use. So no go there. So what I did was I purchased a domain from Google Domains called WNCLUG-Asheville.com. And I went ahead and purchased that domain, set up the DNS so that it's accessible via the web. And then I installed Drupal and got everything set up with Alan's help. And I'm developing Drupal right now, our new home rather, in Drupal. And let me back up and say that there are a couple of reasons why I wanted to choose Drupal instead of WordPress. For those people who are WordPress creators or for website design creators in general, will know that WordPress is inherently insecure. They try to patch it with a lot of plugins, but for the most part, WordPress was never built with security in mind from the ground up. Drupal, however, is. And I may have mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, most of the government websites that were running WordPress, such as Department of Energy, Department of Commerce, Department of Education, were websites like the White House website .gov, were all using WordPress for the most part, and it was determined that they needed to move over to Drupal. So it was declared that you will do that by a certain period of time, and it has been done. So all of those government sites now are Drupal sites. So they're a lot more secure and have a lot more functionality for the most part. And if you're not familiar with Drupal, it is a content management framework, not a system. So that means that it has a lot more functionality with modules and things that let you do just about anything you want to do with it. And so that's why I chose that. So anyway, getting back to our new home, I guess I could go ahead and see if I could bring up, share my screen and show you. Let me try this, see if I can do it. It's been a while since I've done that. And let me share it. And let me go over here. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Can everybody see the website?
Yes.
Okay. This is the site, and it is not accessible right now at WNCLUG or WNC Linux Users Group.com. And the reason for that is you'll notice up here in the address bar, there's a Drupal/Drupal/web. So it's in development right now. And I don't want people who may grab the link to go to it and start looking at it while I'm working on it. So it's in its own little compartment here, Drupal web, and it'll remain there until it's completed. And that's going to be a while, but it's under active development by me right now. Me as the administrator of it, and Alan can grab it, access to it as well. I'll give him access to that if he wants to look at it and get in there and do things. But what I did was, you'll notice it's also a secure site. So I've got a Let's Encrypt SSL certificate on it, because the purpose for that is my intention is to use this website as a means of getting more people to become familiar with us. We're lacking in that pretty severely. We do have a website here, which is our WNCLUG Linux Users Group Asheville, but you'll notice there are only 69 subscribers, and I'd like to see that number go way up, well beyond 69, and we're just not getting those people coming to it. So what I do here with this site is eventually people will be able to set up their own account, get in, comment on posts that are made here, and interact with the site. I intend to set up an events section and do a bunch of other stuff with modules to enhance the site and make it more interactive with people. And then I'll start advertising it on the other sites that we have, and hopefully we'll gain a greater audience. the reason that websites are very important, as opposed to like YouTube channels and things like that, is that you gain a broader audience. This website, when it goes live, it will be a secure HTTPS WNC Linux Users Group.com, period. And so that means I'll have to move the Drupal development platform over to where Apache will grab it if you just type in WNC Linux Users Group.com. So I avoided the $288.88 price tag, and I'm paying $12 a year for this domain. So it's not a big deal for me. And I'm hosting it, self-hosting it. So I'm avoiding, the multi-hundreds of dollars that you pay a web hosting company to do that for you. But let me show you around real quick here. This is the, if I can get my laptop to cooperate with me. Yeah, so this is the home. This is the home page, the front page. And at the bottom here, we got who we are, when we meet, and what should we do next. What should I do next? And I've got a link out here to the email address to subscribe to our group here at the Google group. If I come back up to the top of the page, I've got a menu here off to the left. And if you click on it, it pops the menu up. And the reason for that is there's not enough room across the top to get everything to come up. So I've got it all in one place with a little hamburger menu here. All right, so it pops up. And so I've got an about page. And this about page tells folks that visit the site, or will tell them. I can't get my thing to cooperate here for me. I don't have my mouse. Anyway, and so there's the home page. I've got a footer at the bottom with the copyright information empowered by Drupal. Then I've got a blog that I've set up with blog articles that I've started adding to the site. And I'll be adding those as time goes on. If anybody else has any articles they want to share, let me know. And so I've got 2 articles up there now, basic file and folder structure in Linux. So if the newbies come to this site, they can come to the first 2 articles, which are things about Linux that are good to know, like adding a date time stamp to the history in Linux, that kind of stuff. Not very, advanced stuff. I've got a privacy policy page, which is very, it's got a lot of information. It's very intense. And the reason for that is for protection. Since this is a worldwide website, I've got to consider things like European privacy laws, which are different from the US and other parts of the world. And I'm using this company called Timely to generate this for me. And this is HTML code that I downloaded from Timely after I told Timely exactly what I wanted. And then I just created a basic page in Drupal and put the HTML code in there. So this is what you see. So they come down here to this table of contents. So if they have questions like, what are your privacy rights? You can click on that and it'll go right to there. All right, so that will take them to all they need to know. This is branded. What I mean by that is that it has information about, starts out this privacy notice for Western North Carolina, Linux Users Group Asheville company. We've got a lot of legalese. And anytime that the company name needs to be incorporated anywhere on this privacy page, WNCLUG or Linux Users Group Asheville is specifically mentioned, all right, so that people know that. So that's the privacy policy. And then I've got a link out the Linux Journal, and then I've got a link out to our YouTube channel as well. Okay, so that's our group, and I'm building it now. It's going to take a while. Let me see if I can get back to it. Yeah. Let me go back here and go back to WNCL Linux. Oops, if I can type. Drupal web.
Dan,
All
quick
right,
question.
so no, that didn't come up. I must have mistyped something.
With your content editor, is that Drupal, or do you use an additional, like an HTML editor or something like that?
No, that's Drupal.
That's Drupal. Okay.
Yep. Users group.com. Drupal. Like I said, you can't reach it by just doing in .com. You have to put in the Drupal web to get to it. I can type here on my keyboard. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm back there now. And yeah, so that's going to be our future home. And put a lot of work into it. What you see is taking me about 2 days to accomplish. But there's a lot more to go. So I would say that by next meeting, it may already be in production. I can't guarantee that, but I'm open to any input that anybody has. I put a link out in our Google group to this page so that you can see what I'm doing. And if you visit this page over and over, you'll see updates to it as time goes on. So that's basically all I've got. But then again, I wanted to do a shout out to Alan, because without Alan, I wouldn't be here right now. Because I was having real trouble getting Drupal to get installed to begin with. Couldn't reach the installer for some reason, just because I'm not familiar with a program called Composer, which is now used to do the installation. Before it was a tar.gz file. Composer is the way to go, so Composer is what I'm going to be using to do the install initially, and also to do updates and things like that. And so anyway, hope everybody likes what they see so far, and let me know what you think of it. Turn it back over to Brent. That's all I got.
And again, thanks so much, Dan, for all you do. We really appreciate your enthusiasm in creating these various presences on the internet and Google in general. And obviously, Dan is not our web presence guy. There's no official title there. So if anyone else wants to create things for us, that you're welcome to do so. There's no barrier to it. Obviously, if we don't collectively like something, we will let people know. But the more the merrier, as far as I'm concerned. I think Kevin had some input as far as Drupal. So Kevin, if you are able.
Oh, as a user, it's fantastic. As an admin, it's As a programmer, you just don't touch it. Writing applications to use it as a development framework, you just don't do that, because it does not do things in a sane way as far as like what it expects from your application. So that's why I was apologizing today, and I was like, oh yeah, from the admin side it's okay, but if you ever have to write anything with it as an application framework, it's just like you have to toss everything that you know about programming out and basically start from scratch the Drupal way. It's kind of like if you learn how to do object-oriented programming, and then someone sits down and says, well, you're going to use this object-oriented language in a procedural way. It's like, well, wait a minute. You're doing what? So yeah, that was why I was making that comment in the chat.
Okay.
Well, what else do you got going on, Kevin?
Welcome back, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I took.
That was Europa.
Oh man, it was fantastic. So okay, I have nothing going on tech related other than I have a couple of NUCs that have kind of sat around for VM use, and I think they're gonna get repurposed as just sort of hooked to the television and just enjoy them as little desktop boxes. Can I help you? So I'm babysitting my mother's year-old golden doodle, and it's funny. My mom had said, "Well, she's kind of wild, and I really want her to be more of a lap dog." And this is how wild the golden doodle is. So, I'm gonna have to have a chat with my mother when I see her tomorrow, because I'm going to Chicago this week to pick Katie up and bring her here. So she's running the Chicago Marathon on I guess a week from tomorrow. So I'll go up on the Friday and bring her back here for a couple of weeks. Yeah, the trip was fantastic. I have not been there for this long. I was only there for the month of July, but August got to be kind of busy here. So I was in Asheville a couple of weeks. Well, I guess at this point it was more like 6 weeks ago. Traded the KTM for a BMW, so I'm on a GS now, and I think I rode 4,900 miles on the previous bike in 4 years. I put about 3,200 on this one in 7 weeks. So yeah, riding has consumed a large part of my personal time now.
What size bike is that?
I think it's listed as a 1250, but I went for the Adventure because it has an 8-gallon fuel tank. And so, 7.9, it's 39 liters ish. And so the ability to get over 300 miles on a tank on a motorcycle at 65 miles per hour was a big selling point. The big thing was I'll leave the office at 5, and I only have a very limited amount of time to get here to call and make that international phone call, right? Because she's got to get to bed, and so what I didn't want to do was have to take time out of my day to stop on my way to work to get fuel, or take time out of my day to stop on my way home to get fuel. And it's really nice being able to just fill up on the weekends and then do 250 miles during the week and not worry about it. So. Yeah, but yeah, I've got nothing tech going on, other than I'm going to repurpose those NUCs as probably Ubuntu 2204 boxes, plug them up to the television, and just use them to do some light video editing and really just stream Netflix to my television, because I don't like the Netflix app that's on my television. So, yeah.
Kevin, can I respond to your comment about programming in Drupal?
Yeah, please do.
Drupal is mainly written in the PHP language, and it also supports JavaScript and other web scripting. So it is different than like C or C++, but PHP is a pretty much full programming language stack. And if you go to Drupal.org, you can see tens of thousands of add-on modules. And Drupal developers write these modules. It uses hooks to hook into the Drupal engine. And I mean, there are modules for everything you can think of, from crossword puzzles to currency translators. They even have a Jitsi Meet module that will plug directly into your Drupal website. They have Google APIs, the e-commerce modules. You can even build your own Facebook lookalike module. They have it where you can download it, install it, or modify it. So, I mean, it is different. It's a slightly different approach, but it's pretty much common PHP. I would like to say, in response to Dan, Dan did an incredible job here in a short period of time. I'm just so impressed with the content that he generated. Just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I encourage you all to explore Drupal by going to drupal.org, and I can text in a couple of really good links on how to get started on developing Drupal or using Drupal. And so basically that's what I wanted to say.
I started in tech once I moved from being an ISP sysadmin to being a web developer, writing content on, or like writing applications on content management systems. And like as soon as I started writing for Drupal, it was like, oh no, everything that they teach you about how to write object-oriented PHP, none of that applies. And that was the context for my comment.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to say something too. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate the compliment. But I used to teach web-based concepts, applications when I was teaching the college level in HTML and PHP, JavaScript, server-side scripting language, and that's what really attracted me to Drupal was the fact that it runs primarily on PHP, JavaScript, server-side scripting, and so I'm looking forward to getting into some of that around the Drupal modules as well. But Alan's correct. I mean, there are tens of thousands of these modules that'll do everything but wash dishes for you, and so this is another reason that I chose Drupal over like WordPress because there's not a lot of stuff out there. I mean, they do write code for WordPress and all, but if you want to do anything different than the basic stuff that WordPress offers you, you better be a PHP procedural program language programmer anyway, not object oriented necessarily. I've never been a big object oriented programmer. I do know PHP and I do know Python, but I know both of those in the procedural side, not on the object oriented side. Object oriented programming, my hat's off to you, Kevin. It hurts my head.
It hurts mine
It
too.
does. So it is hard to wrap your mind around object oriented programming. And my brother he's big on C and C++ right now, and he's into object oriented C, and I just don't know how he does it, but he's done some remarkable stuff. But anyway, that's the comment I wanted to make, so I'll get out of the way and let somebody else talk.
If he likes C, ask him if he's tried diving into Rust.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was a really interesting dive for me. I like C. I like C++. I do not like Objective C.
Yeah.
So Rust was interesting.
Yeah. How about C#? Have you gotten into that?
I did not do a lot with C# because really the only way for me to run it on Linux was with Mono at one point. And so I just kind of stayed away from it. That was it was very popular with my Windows running friends.
Oh, okay.
But I never jumped in. It was very readable. Right? It was the code was very readable, but I never wanted to jump in as a programmer on it.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. I think we've talked to most folks. I've kind of hopped around more than usual, so I'm losing track. Steve, is your audio working? I'm not hearing you, Steve.
He was up here earlier, so I see him over there.
All right. Looks like he's got some technical challenges still. So have we missed anyone except for Steve and myself? Because like I said, I know we've bounced around a lot.
Arnold.
All right. Arnold did say that he doesn't have a mic still running on Linux Mint. And again, we gotta get that guy working. I can still hear his voice in my head, but it's starting to fade. So as far as me,
Now that's just one of the voices in your head, right?
The one that doesn't talk back.
this isn't the forum for that. Drupal, I don't use it personally. I have actually very briefly. What I used Drupal for was I needed to create we now at work I touched upon phishing briefly. We do phishing education at work with a product called KnowBe4, which is pretty good at what it does, and it just sends phish emails to folks, simulated phish emails, and lets people click on it, and then lets people know what they've done wrong, reports on it back to us, so we can perhaps send more education their way as well. So we do that, and that has significantly improved our users' phishing awareness. And I do suggest anyone who's in the same boat as I am do something along those lines. Before we used KnowBe4, we tried our hand at phishing our users more manually with simulated phishing emails. So I would basically design these sample phishes and send it to them and direct them to an internal website that would basically let them know that they've been phished. That internal website was built on Drupal. And that is as far as I got with Drupal, is basically building an extremely basic website saying, hey, this is what you've done wrong. It was bad, but it was the quickest way for me to get a website up internally that I didn't feel was like a security risk. Speaking of security risk, the company I work for, its web presence is built on Drupal, both for the external sort of marketing sites as well as the internal portal like employee website. They work fine. So far, the security has been great. However, it has been decided on high that our marketing sites are being moved to WordPress, which was disappointing. But apparently it's more of a cost thing. We just don't need we don't need the support for these sites. So we'll see how it goes. Most of these external marketing sites are very static. They don't change much, but you know, and the difference is they will be externally hosted. They won't be something that I'm concerned with the security of, other than obviously if they get defaced and so forth. They don't provide a way into my network, since they're going to be out there in the cloud on WordPress. So in that way, it's better for security. But yeah, hopefully they just won't get defaced or otherwise be an eyesore. But that hasn't happened yet. So we'll see if that's something that, because one thing I always say at work is I don't believe it until it's already happened, because the winds tend to change so much that, like, they say they're going to do something, but between saying they're going to do it and it actually happening, anything can happen. So I'm hoping ultimately they choose a slightly different direction, but I do like the fact that the marketing sites are going out to the cloud and are not something that presents a potential point of ingress to our network. So that's my Drupal experience, very limited, but overall positive. Drupal has always been managed by external parties. We've always had, I think we are on our third Drupal outfit, which is a place called Appnovation right now. We've also had two other companies. One was Chapter 3. I forget what the first one was. Maybe that was the first one. I don't know. But there's a lot of folks out there who do Drupal. That's one advantage of Drupal, is there's a lot of help out there, companies that's all they do. One thing that has been kind of a weird thing with our Drupal support is I have insisted that our Drupal support has also been our Linux support, because Otherwise, it's just me. Our systems team is a Windows centric team. We have one guy that has some knowledge of Linux, but he's also the manager of that team. So he's getting to be less and less keyboard focused and more like sitting in meetings all day focused, which I don't think is the best fit for him because he's extremely talented in what he does. And I'd rather see him in front of the keyboard. But it's, yeah, we have to have, from my standpoint, like I have to have them do everything from the virtual hosts up. So if it's updates, if it's a problem they're having, and that's not always worked out that way because just recently they've come to me and said, why isn't this working? Fix it. I'm like, not my job to fix, but I fixed it for you. It was a firewall rule that you should have fixed yourself. So there's a little bit of contention because I understand that this is not a position that these folks are usually put into. Usually they just do Drupal and up. But again, every time we've signed the contract with them, I've been very insistent that it's from the OS up. And again, it's been working, but we are starting to get away from Drupal as being this thing that we do. We're trying to push all these things out to the cloud. So hopefully into the future, it's not something I have to worry about too much. But that's the way we do it. What else? Oh, so I have mentioned my KVM issues in the past where I'll swap to, I have on this computer, this setup here, I have my work computer, which is a Windows workstation provided by work, which I used to do everything over Citrix from this Linux workstation, but I'm trying to be a more typical user. So I have a more typical user experience. So I do everything as a non-privileged user on a Windows workstation, but I do have the need to test things on my virtual instances on my Linux workstation. So I want to be able to move over fast. So I got a KVM switch and it mostly works, but every once in a while I'll swap back to Windows and it will be non-responsive. Like the keyboard and mouse will, basically the USB will be reset and it won't want to connect. One thing that I found out there is that it might be the fact that I'm trying to use a USB 2 thing on a USB 3 port. And there are only USB 3 ports on my Windows machine. So one thing I tried doing is using which was a suggested thing, using a USB 2 hub so that isn't the case. I did try that with this super cheap USB 2 port hub. Kind of a ridiculous thing really just to have 2 ports on a hub, but it did the job to try that. Ultimately did not work. That was not the problem. I still have the same issue pop up. So it's not like the worst thing ever because I don't find myself swapping around 100 times a day. If I did, it would be really problematic, but it does lock up every now and again when I swap back. So what I have been using VirtualBox pretty heavily on that machine to test some things. I've been testing some problems I've been having with. It ultimately turned out to be the antivirus was the issue, but some folks who are remote have been reporting problems getting to GoToWebinar. And I have figured it was our web filtering, and it probably to some extent was, but it's probably some combination of our web filtering and our antivirus and so forth. So I was able to use our my virtual stuff to test that. However, when I updated to Mint 21 on this box, it broke VirtualBox, which was annoying. But an uninstall and reinstall didn't fix it. For whatever reason, a second uninstall and reinstall VirtualBox did. So I don't know exactly the nature of the problem, but it is working now, which is great. One thing I had to do to do some testing when I absolutely positively had to test like right away is I had to copy my virtual machines to a USB key and then bring them up on a laptop running VirtualBox in an earlier version until I was able to figure out my VirtualBox, which did work. I mean, that is one cool thing, is being able to just take an entire virtual machine, copying it over and bringing it up elsewhere. And I was able to do the stuff I had to do that day. Then it is much nicer having it working on my the machine I use primarily for that. For one, it has a lot more available RAM because I knew that's something I was wanted to be able to do. And one thing I realized, I brought up my virtual machine on my laptop and it failed because I had given it 16 gigs of RAM, which worked fine for my machine with 32 gigs of RAM, but didn't work out so well on the machine that only had 16 gigs of RAM. So that froze up really pretty much instantly when I did that. It didn't offer me any errors suggesting that that was the problem, but it was not happy. But yeah, I very quickly realized, yeah, okay, I don't have that much RAM on this machine. So yeah, but that's really kind of what's happening. This machine has frozen up twice during this meeting. I've noticed that it only freezes on while I'm doing meetings like this or watching video. So I think it's probably have something to do with the integrated graphics. I don't know for sure. Never really gotten to the bottom of that. It doesn't happen a lot, but it has happened more than a few times now, and has happened during these meetings, which is annoying. But if anyone has any input, it is a Pentium G4500, I think, or 4400, I forget, something in that general realm. I forget the motherboard. It's a ASRock motherboard that has failed on me before when I've done BIOS updates, but has otherwise been fairly solid. So I don't know if anyone has any input. I haven't really done any real investigation on it because it's not my daily driver anymore now that I'm forced into the Windows world for work. But again, you know, when I'm looking at the YouTubes and so forth, it does fail every now and again. I don't think I have anything else going on. So we've gone through everybody, I think, other than Steve. So Steve, have you figured yourself out? I'm not sure Steve is even hearing us. Steve, thumbs up if you can hear me. I see your mouth moving, Steve, but not hearing you. Can you hear me? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm assuming that he cannot hear us or anything.
Yeah, it's too bad because I wanted to hear more about his issue that he posted.
Yeah, he nodded that he cannot hear us.
Mm.
Well, that is unfortunate. Hopefully we'll hear from him next time, in the very least.
Brian,
Yeah.
I had a comment rather on your VirtualBox problem. Have you considered installing VirtualBox as a snap package as opposed to a regular install? I had to do that to correct a problem I had with VirtualBox.
I'm not a big fan of things like Snap or Docker. I'm a big fan of keeping things close to the bare metal. I mean, I'm a Linux user.
You're not a flatpak user or an app image
No,
user?
I'm really not. I really that whole model just has always kind of irked me. I understand why it can be a good thing. The joke is like it works on my machine, and that's the whole like basis of Docker is okay. Just take my machine, the whole config top to bottom. Now it works.
I've used all of those.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not. Yeah, it like I said, it started working. I got it working. So yeah, it's not a big deal. So yeah, it it is certainly and it's the first issue I've had actually with a Mint upgrade. They've always gone very, very smooth. And I've done several on 2 different machines. I haven't actually updated my laptop yet. I probably should go ahead and give that a go this weekend to see if I have any issues, including because I do have VirtualBox on there because I installed it to